Hello, in this video I'll show you my implementation for Milestone 7 of the Minesweeper Coding Challenge. So Milestone 7 was to add a custom mode. So each of these modes have a predetermined preset number of rows, columns, and mines. And in custom mode you can enter how many rows, how many columns, and how many mines you want in the board. And for now we haven't done any fancy, form validation here, and we haven't handled a case where they're a very large board. Just like the basics of setting these numbers and, playing the game with these numbers. And when you move to a different mode and back to custom, you still have these numbers here. So let me show you how I implemented it. We'll start with a GameService. So if you remember, the GameService is just the model, just the, the information, the underlying information for the game without anything to do with display. So the game is as it was before, up until now in previous milestones. And we used to have a piece of model that was called GameSettings, and I changed it to something which is more straightforward, just GameSetting ID. So it's just a string, which can be beginner, intermediate, expert, or custom. And from this string, you can infer the row count, column count, and mine count either by looking in the presets map object or by looking at custom settings, which is another piece of model which I added now. So basically what this is the same as this, except for custom settings, because it can change all the time. So basically, you could think of it this way. This piece of state has a one-to-one relationship with these 4 buttons, and this piece of state has a one-to-one relationship with this form, these form fields. So a lot more straightforward. And then you have get custom settings and set custom settings, which are extremely straightforward functions. No logic, no issues. And same with get game setting ID and set game setting ID. So I really like that I changed this rather than keeping what it was before in the previous milestone. And that's how coding goes. Sometimes you have to do these mini refactors, and if you don't do them, the problem just grows and grows and becomes heavier and heavier. So it's best to fix things the moment you see that you can fix them. Obviously, don't overthink it, but sometimes you just realize that you could do it a little bit more clean, and that is a little bit cleaner, and that is a right move, I would say. Okay, so how would you reset the game? How do you support that with custom mode? So it's very simple. You just need to figure out what the row count, column count, and mine count are of the current game settings. So the way this private helper function is implemented is very simple. If the game setting ID is custom, return the custom game settings. Otherwise, return the presets of beginner, intermediate, or expert, right? Because presets is a map object. Extremely simple, extremely straightforward. One more thing I forgot to mention is that when I implemented this, I realized that the correct term is mines and not bombs. I've been saying bombs for like 6 milestones now. So I basically renamed everything to every place I saw bomb, I renamed it to mine. So instead of bomb counter, I have mine counter. I changed everything in the code, including, we had the SVGs, the BB, SVG, etc., which stands for bomb. I changed it to MM to stand for mine. So I think it's much better, to have terminology, across the board. Don't call it mine sometimes and bomb sometimes. Just call it one thing across the board. Your code will be cleaner, easier to understand, easier to debug, and easier to expand. Okay, so let's take a look at the game settings, which is basically this component up here, right? Because if I'm in one of these modes, you don't see the form. And if I'm here, you see the form. So the game settings includes both the list of game setting, which is this list, and it also includes this form, which may or may not be shown. So I added this state, which is either true or false, starts off as false, don't show this custom form. And I also changed, I accessed the game setting ID from the context. So I changed the context. Remember the context? The context comes from the app, right? So we have the game setting ID. And then we have a context so that every component inside the app can access these pieces of state, which are at the app level, so that they can be reactive. So game settings has access to changing the game setting ID and getting the game setting ID. And whenever you click on a setting, you check whether the setting ID is custom, and if so, you set the show custom form to be either true or false. So when you click on custom, show custom form is true. When you click on beginners, show custom form is false. And that is why the custom form is either displayed or not displayed, right? Very simple. And additionally, you change the game setting ID, right, in the model. And what that does is it sets the game setting ID at the model in the service. It resets the game accordingly. And it updates the two pieces of state according to what is in the model. And then, everything reacts to that, right? The board reacts to this change because the board looks at the game, etc. Okay, so I think the last thing we have to look at, right, I added another option to the buttons, right? Because I generate the buttons using this map object, or basically this array, I should say, not map object. I map each item in this array to one of these guys. And let's take a look at custom form. I think that's it. So custom form, you have a draft representing what the form should display, and you get the settings from the game service. And we have a form here with 3 fields, 3 inputs, and their corresponding labels. And their values come from the draft. So you have row count, column count, and mine count in the draft. And you have different display strings for each one. And if any of these change, like if you type anything, then the onChange method is invoked, which basically updates the draft. So it's a two-way binding, right? And once you submit the form, you prevent default and you invoke the onSubmit property function with the draft. And what that does eventually is on custom form submit, which updates the game service and notifies basically updates the custom settings in the game service and notifies the app component that the game setting has changed to custom. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm accessing the game service in the right places or not. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm still pretty happy with this code. So I'm going to leave it like this, and maybe in future I can improve my code. I think that's always the case. We can always improve our code. And in the next milestone, I think what we're going to deal with is, at least I have performance issues. If I write 100 by 100, I also have to do like form validation. So I wanted that in a separate milestone. So if I do 100 by 100, see, it takes a few moments. It takes like a second. And if you open up the console, let's do that again. So 100 by 100, look what it says. Why doesn't it say anymore? Anyway, it used to tell me that that this took too long. And I also have a more severe performance issue or bug where, see, maximum call stack exceeded. So I have to fix expose cell not to be recursive. So yeah, that will be in the next milestones. I will post a video saying what Milestone 8 is, but I'll leave a link in the description to my solution to Milestone 7. You're welcome to take a look at it. You're welcome to comment, say, tell me if you liked it, if you have a different idea for how to solve it, if this helped you in any way, and I'll see you in the next video.